new
Ponta,
live cast.
while Aryan
And we're
introduces
okay.
herself. In the royal castle, Prince Dockhares throws a fit about the haunted wolves that stop taking orders.
There.
Another man there named Centrion speculates that the rings on the wolves may have been broken somehow, and that Uriana is likely to be alive. This would pose a severe problem to Dockhare's plans to stop the negotiations between the elves and her. Dockhares then asks who the perpetrators were, and Centrion responds that they were likely elves and would have eventually arrived in Olav. Meanwhile, Ark and the
Anyway,
group walk through
hello
a
there.
forested area,
Mia.
and Chiome informs
Meow.
Ark that the founder of
Yeah,
her village
I'm
wasn't
actually
a
just
beastman,
watching YouTube
but a human
videos.
named
And
Hanzo.
yeah, might as
She
well show
reveals
my
that
live
Hanzo
stream.
was once a spy for the Revlon Empire who took it upon himself to take an underprivileged beastman in his
I
care
am
and train
planning
some
to
of them
play a
too.
video game a
Reaching the
little bit
destination,
later.
the
But I'm
largest
just
slave market in
relaxing
Olav Etsat market.
because I just
By
came
dusk,
back from...
Chiome goes over the plan and asks that both Aryan and Ark act
hell?
conspicuously, and then make a quick escape when they're done. Chiome admits that she doesn't believe that everyone involved in this will be able to escape.
There.
Ark then asks if
Anyway, I'm
Etsat is
just
a
lounging
decoy,
about.
and Chiome
I was
confirms it
actually
by mentioning the
watching
other 4
YouTube,
slave markets in
actually.
Olav will be targeted.
Yeah, sounds
Chiome
weird,
goes off
but
to
oh
notify
well.
her comrades, tells Ark and Aryan that the assault on the market will take place that night, and advises them to prepare themselves. Ark dons a new
So,
mask,
where are you
and
from?
are soon
Are
met
you
by
from-
Chiome and her companion Goemon. It's decided that
You're
Aryan
from
and
the
Chiome
Philippines
will
or
attack the
something?
front, while
I don't know,
Ark
I'm
and
just
Goemon
confused
will
now.
attack the rear. Wasting no time, Ark and Goemon approach the back gate, and Goemon casts Stone Smasher on himself to help Ark break through the front
Pilipina
door.
ka pala. Okay,
Inside
hello.
the place, Ark takes
Musta
out
na?
several
How are
guards,
you?
and Goemon casts Arm Bracer.
Wala lang,
transforms his
nagtitrip lang
body
ako
into
ngayon.
hardened
So, mamaya
steel that
siguro
breaks the
maglalaro ako
weapons
ng
of those who
games.
attack
Pero
him.
ngayon papahinga lang ako.
Taking
Galing
advantage
kasi
of the
kaming
situation,
supermarket ng
Goemon
aking
casts
commander.
Rock Spear Strike, and Ark adds to it with
Kagaling
his
lang
Rock
namin
Fang.
sa
On the
supermarket.
opposite side of the
Namili
fort,
ng
Chiome and Aryan manage to
grocery.
get past the front
So,
gate and
ngayon,
head toward the market.
I'm
During
just
the night of the
resting.
attack on the Etsat market, Dockhares
Okay
and
lang ba?
Cetrion's
Okay
safe
naman,
haven
di ba?
learns from the
Yeah.
said person that the
Yeah,
market is under
semi-transparent
attack,
yung gawa ko,
as well
tapos
as 4
kita
other
naman.
slave markets as well.
Kita naman, di ba?
Dockhares demands that reinforcements be sent to the places under attack,
Yeah, it looks
and
good.
notes his frustration about his situation. At the Etsat market, Chiome, Aryan, and Ponta infiltrate the place, and a couple of guards soon accost them.
Yeah, okay.
The guards are quickly dealt with by Chiome's ninjutsu Liquid Wolf Fang. They then reach the cells where the slaves are held, and Chiome announces herself as part of the Jinshin clan who's there to rescue them all. As Chiome opens some of the cells, more guards arrive and are swiftly dealt with by Aryan. Outside in the market compound, Ark and Goemon
Napapapunta ako
rise
tuloy
from
sa
the
mga
rubble and
recap
are
na
soon
web
joined
na
by
mga
Chiome's group, who
YouTuber.
informs them of the Beast People's whereabouts. Goemon decides to stay alone and
Kind
defend
of
the
annoying,
area
but
if
makes sense
reinforcements
though.
arrive,
I mean,
leaving Ark and the
hindi
others
sila
to return
basta-basta
to the market
makaka-copyright
and
ano eh,
free more
kasi
of the
do
slave
audio.
held captives.
Kasi nasummarize
Once
nila
they
yung
do,
story.
Chiome finds a pile of dead bodies and a slave informs
Kaya
them
ang
that
bilis
the
nila
slaves who were
magpalit ng ano
sick
eh,
or injured were disposed
ng
of.
scene para hindi sila
Ark pulls
makopyright ng
Chiome
YouTube.
together, and they all regroup with the slave in the hall and then
But
teleported out by
napapaisip ako,
Ark's
I
magic
wonder
in
if
large groups.
this is enough
Once
para
that was settled,
ma-shutdown
Ark
sila.
returns to the
Probably
market
hindi
compound
kasi
to assist the
ano na
injured
siya
and
eh.
belabored Goemon. With Ark using his Rock Fang and Goemon using his
medyo
Rock
ibang
Spear
diskarte
Strike,
na eh.
they
May
managed to decimate the
nagsasummary,
reinforcements without a
may
hassle.
commentator.
After this, the two
So,
reconvene with
probably
Aryan
medyo
and
iba yan.
Chiome and bring along the deceased slaves' bodies. Once the bodies are properly and respectively laid out on the ground, Aryan cremates them. Meanwhile, Dockhares is assassinated by Cetrion, who is in cahoots with Prince Sect, who learns from Cetrion about the freed slaves and Uriarna's supposed demise. Pleased by the news, Sect asks Cetrion to spread the news of Uriarna's death and relishes that he now is the sole heir to the throne. Time passes and Ark's group returns to Olav. They ride on a boat steered by Goemon and learn from Chiome that Goemon and her will head to a hidden village in the Calcut Mountains. She then claims that she'll give them the important information she had promised them. In the Grand Duchy of Linbolt, Uriarna reaches her sister Ciriarna's castle, and she learns from her sister about her supposed demise. After contemplating the situation over, Uriarna tells her sister not to inform her father about her survival and instead hopes to continue her duty by speaking to the elves. Back to Ark's group, Aryan relays a message through a whisper bird so Danka can be brought up to date with the current events. A flashback of the information given by Chiome that the location of the remaining elven slaves are at the Holy Revlon Empire. Meanwhile, in the imperial capital of the Holy Revlon
Yeah,
Empire,
puro isekai ang
Emperor
uso talaga
Domitianus
ngayon, ano?
learns of the death of
Very
Dockhares from
interesting.
his chancellor Velmos. Although pleased by the news that Uriarna is dead, Velmos informs Domitianus that the rings they provided to Dockhares were broken, and that a third person is involved in killing the princess. Domitianus speculates that Sect was the likely one to do it and asks about Fumba's progress in bringing Olav to ruin. Velmos happily announces that his progress is coming along smoothly. In a barren wasteland, a flock of sand wyverns flies in the sky and Ark becomes super excited by their presence. Meanwhile, someone is watching and taking notes on Ark. Arian discloses the plan on how they'll reach the Revlon Empire. Arian claims that unlike the Rodent Kingdom Elven, slavery is allowed and her being an elf is notably disconcerting. They're then approached by the person spying on them before. He introduced himself as Carsey Held, an elven monster researcher. Carsey then requests that they help him with his research on monsters, and Arian flatly refuses, but Carsey offers them a map of the Revlon Empire as a reward for their services. Carsey informs the two to meet him at the town entrance the next day. Ark then asks for information on the sandworm they're hunting, and Carsey elaborates on it. Arian then notices that the cart behind them is gone, and then the sandworm in question appears and is considerably bigger than expected. Spotting Carsey's companion by the broken cart, Arian tries to rescue him, but is ambushed by the sandworm, so she tries to exploit its weakness to fire with a fire spell. However, her attack against it was futile, and the sandworm tries to attack her, but Ark manages to save her in the nick of time, allowing her and Carsey's companion to retreat to a safe location. Taking advantage of the situation, Ark pulls the sandworm out from the ground and using his immense strength, slams it to the ground. Once the sandworm was knocked out, the attached ring disappeared. Later that day, the sandworm is tied up and brought back to the town. There, Carsey gives the two their reward. Meanwhile, an unnamed man from Revlon reports to Fumba as he fondles a couple of women by his side about the recent number of missing people. Fumba then shows the man the monster he has in store for the next attack and feeds one of his women to it. Arriving at the border town of Kasek, Ark figures they finally arrived in the Revlon Empire, the place where the captured elves were being imprisoned in. Because of the tight security in the vicinity, they decide to ask around town while trying not to draw attention themselves. By dusk, Ark reviews what he's learned, that noises are coming from the castle, and that people from the town have mysteriously disappeared over time. However, there's still no word about elves being held captive there. Before Ark and Ponta regroup with Arian, they hear a woman screaming and find a lady in an alleyway being confronted by a trio of men. Ark arrives at the scene and deals with the brutes. That night in his fortress, Fumba learns from the three men who tried to capture the lady in the alleyway of their failure, so he feeds them to his white tiger monster. Outside of the fortress, Ark and the group proceed toward the fortress. Once inside the fortress, Arian locates a hidden stairway, and as they walk down it, the pungent smell of beasts is noted. At the bottom of the stairs, the two guards guarding the solid iron gate are swiftly dealt with. Ponta then finds another iron gate that Ark opens, and behind it, the group finds a massive underground space with pillars all around the area.
Orsa ba? Ano sa bebe?
Fumba then
Okay,
arrives
so
and
pwede
notes
pa
that
naman
he
yan.
came to investigate what was alerting his monsters. Fumba introduces himself by his full name and job title, Monster Sorcerer. He goes on to explain the extent of his skill in his profession, which concerns Ark, and then spots the rings attached to his belt match the ones he's encountered before in his travels. Figuring that Ark doesn't believe him, Fumba summons his white tiger monster to deal with him. Ark places Arian at a safe distance and asks Fumba about the elves who arrived there 4 months ago. Fumba then reveals that while most of them were sent to the Empire for their magical experiments, the remaining ones were used for his amusement. Hearing that, Ark slices off the monster's head with a single swipe and admits that he's encountered a fair amount of villainy since he's arrived in that land. Unfazed by this, Fumba summons a horde of monsters, but Ark briskly deals with them all with his sword and skills like Shield Bash. Still unfazed by this outcome, Fumba points out that Arian is in a pinch, and Ark then sees that an orc was about to crush her with its club. However, the orc is entrapped in a body of water called Liquid Prison created by Chioma. Although Fumba tries to summon more monsters, he's told by Chioma that her comrades have eliminated them all. Just then, the ground starts to tremor and Fumba claims that his masterpiece is Humbrian. They'll settle the score outside and flees the scene. Teleporting outside with Arian in his arms and both Ponta and Chioma on his shoulders, Ark recognizes the monster that escapes from the fortress as a Hydra. Ark notices the rings on the Hydra that emerged from the fortress, and Chioma suggests a tactical retreat. However, before they can, the Hydra fires straight at them. Fumba watches this through the Hydra and relishes his victory over Ark's
Oh,
group.
really?
Fumba sends the Hydra to Kasek to feed
Are you
upon
sure
its
about
inhabitants.
that?
Meanwhile, Ark and Chioma are shown to be both alive as Ark's shield magic
Like,
protected them.
Gonna be looking at you
Despite
right now.
Arian
Gotta
wanting
say.
to go after
Are you
Fumba,
sure
Ark
about
suggested
that?
that he hunt the Hydra heading for Kasek.
Are you sure about that?
Figuring Ark could do it alone, Chioma
Are you
and
sure
Arian
about
go by
that?
themselves to hunt Fumba. In the Holy East Revlon Empire, Velmos gives Emperor Domitianus an update concerning the Destroyer of Nations, and the Rings of Submission created from the analysis of Fumba's sorcery are nearly complete. The Hydra was closing in on Kasek, and the city guards raise an alarm as the head guard ordered preparations for an evacuation. Catching up to the Hydra, Ark uses his Wyvern Slash to catch its attention and follows up with a Shield Bash. An astonished Fumba witnesses this as it plays out, and then Ark dodges its Flame Breath with a Dimension move, but one of the heads bites down on him. Despite the other heads about to fire off fireballs at the entrapped Ark, he defends himself with his magic, and in the process, the head that entrapped him is destroyed. Using his judgment skill, Ark destroys 3 of the Hydra heads only for them to regenerate. Teleporting to a safe distance, Ark prepares to use a magic spell he's never used before and summons Ifrit to face off against the Hydra. Elsewhere, Panta leads Aryan and Chioma to Fumba's location, and he was amused by Aryan's presence, figuring she was there to become his. Fumba tries to possess Aryan with his monsters, but she kills them before he can. Chioma also scars his back, revealing he had a special spell Crest Seal on his back that helped him control his monsters. Fumba warns them that the Hydra is now out of his control and will kill everyone in the city. Aryan then assures Chioma that everything will be alright because Ark is down there to fight against the Hydra and then proceeds to incinerate Fumba with her flame sword. Back to Ark's side, through the combined efforts of Ark and his summon, Ifrit, they destroy the Hydra. Once Ark regroups with Aryan, Chioma, and Panta, a whisper bird sent by Danka arrives and conveys that Princess Yuriarna has met with one of the great elven elders Fangas. The meeting between them was to settle the matters between their respective kingdoms. Prince's sect and Dockhares are mentioned as conspirators with the Revlon Empire as well. Princess Yuriarna promises that if the Revlon Empire invaded the Elven lands, the Olive Kingdom would help defend them. Fangas agrees to these terms and shakes Yuriarna's hand on it. Returning to Ark's group, they walk down a dirt path. Ark and the group talk about the coexistence between humans and elves. In the kingdom of Olav, Cetrion reports to Prince Sex that Princess Yuriarna survived and her negotiations with the elves were a success. Considering the possibility of a double agent, Prince Sex brushes this off and claims an alternate path to achieve their goal will be taken. In her room, Yuriarna believes that she died once before but was brought back to life to fulfill her angel's wishes. News of the deaths of the Hydra and Fumba reach Domitianus, who considers it no loss whatsoever and is curious to know who slew the Hydra. Meanwhile, Ark unintentionally reveals his face to Chioma and is then filled in on Ark's condition. It's decided that after they reach Lalatoya, Aryan will guide Ark to Lord Crown. Excited about that trip, Ark also asks to see Chiome's hometown and she sheepishly agrees.
Oh, Terraform Mars. Oh, Terraform Mars. That's terrible. That's terrible.
Round 1, fight!
Wait a second. Where's the chat? The heck? Okay, it's not really bad. It's more like, where is the chat? I swear. Isn't like... Okay, now I'm kind of confused. Isn't like... Shouldn't OBS have like some chat? I can't find it. The heck?
It's no mystery that I watch a ton of anime. Maybe too much, but with watching a lot of shows comes a lot of protagonists that I end up disliking. Kirito from Sword Art Online was pretty bland and didn't have much substance to him, meant purely to be a self-insert for the audience. Meliodas is infuriating because literally he is always groping the female lead of the show and it's a little unbearable. Kaneki makes extremely questionable and frustrating decisions, although I know he's way different in the manga, his anime counterpart is frustrating to watch. And the main character from School Days is insufferable and I could not stand him. However, I never hated any of these characters. I did strongly dislike them, but I could at least find some parts of them that were tolerable, except for the School Days guy. It's a little up in the air. It wasn't until I met Kazuya Kinoshita from
Oh, that
Rent a
guy,
Girlfriend
though.
that I found a protagonist that I absolutely detested and hated with almost every fiber of my being. I watched the anime for Rent a Girlfriend back when it aired during summer 2020, which, saying out loud, is kind of crazy how this show aired almost 2 years ago. I watched it weekly, and I thought it was trash, but I couldn't stop watching it. And let me tell you, it was such a storm of garbage. I came back week after week, torturing myself by watching our main
why do
character
that?
Kazuya lie to his
Why do
entire
that?
family and all of his friends. Kazuya acting like an incel and being constantly confused on what he wanted, and I even watched the damn man realize he liked someone because he pleasured himself for 5 minutes straight in that episode. I absolutely hated every second I watched of him, and yet
Yeah, this
I
fight is
couldn't
kind of
stop
dumb, though.
watching this
I
show.
don't
After
totally
it ended,
understand.
I somehow kept thinking about it. Not in a necessarily positive manner, however. It was more in the sense that I thought to myself, there is no way that it stays this bad down the line in the manga. So after a few months of sitting on it, I decided to pick up the manga and read it with hopes that it would be better in any capacity than what I witnessed in the anime. And actually, to my surprise, it wasn't that bad. The manga carries on into an arc that I found myself enjoying quite a lot, and Kazuya started to become pretty tolerable. Dare I even say a good character? Then they, ruined it, and he's been terrible again for probably the last 30 or 40 chapters, and that, my friends, is what we're here about today. I'm going to talk about the 3 big parts of the story. The beginning, that's terrible, but makes you hopeful for the future. The middle, that actually gets kinda good, and where we currently are, which is, in my opinion, worse than the beginning. So join me today as we dissect why Kazuya Kinoshita is one of the worst characters ever written, and how Rent a Girlfriend is one of the most infuriating and frustrating things I've ever witnessed. Rent a Girlfriend starts off with our main character Kazuya getting broken up with by his girlfriend Mami after they had dated for 1 month. Despite them being in college, this is Kazuya's first relationship, and despite it being very short-lived, he's incredibly hung up about it.
Really?
He's sad his advancements never worked or were always
didn't
shut
see
down.
that movie
Due
arc,
to
though.
his fragile mental state, he gets captivated by a rental service where he can pay a girl to be his girlfriend for roughly $50 per hour. He expects the date to be absolutely horrible, or the girl to be pretty ugly, but he's instead
Yeah,
met
let's
with
try-
a
let's-
beautiful,
Okay, let's-
unlikable, frustrating, and not a good character by any stretch of the mile. Majority of the time I spend watching him makes me super annoyed and irritated. Mizuhara is a character that I think is too perfect and needs some kind of flaws. Ruka is being led on, but also isn't a saint because she does some things that aren't cool. Mami is an awful human being, but that's intentional. And Sumi and Kibe are saints in this dumpster fire of a series. And this story is just like watching all the characters digging a giant hole and showing no signs of stopping. They just keep going and keep lying and making everything worse. The first
Holy
season
shit,
ends at
a
around
2.5
chapter 50 of the
hour
manga, with Kazuya
video
sort
by
of
H.
confessing to
Bomber Guy
Mizuhara
about Ruby.
and it clearly rocking her world. Will anything come of his almost confession? Let's talk about it in the middle of the story and see if we can find out. Alright, I'll go ahead and say it right now that absolutely nothing comes out of this almost confession, and it ends up just being kind of a bait to get you to either the next chapter or the next part of the story. Now, I know I just bashed the series for
A never-ending
pretty
ending.
good while, but something strange happened after the initial setup of the series. It actually got pretty good. This time around, we're going to go into a series of events because the events of the story actually matter now, instead of just throwing around random character descriptions. Allow me to explain. And also for anime onlys, we're going into manga territory, so there will be spoilers from here on out. The flawless Mizuhara has finally started her journey to fulfill her dreams of being an actress, at the cost of likely quitting her job as a rental girlfriend. Curious as to how her show and acting would go, Kazuya decides to see her play at a nearby theater to both support her dreams, but also to see if this would spell the end of their very strange relationship. When she comes onto the stage, he's blown away by her performance. She's able to get the crowd laughing very easily, including himself when he didn't really plan on enjoying the show at all, and able to move them all when it came to her character's death. Kazuya himself notes that no matter what was going on in the play, all eyes were subconsciously on Mizuhara. This already is starting to make me view her character a little
Hello there,
differently,
Hideko.
since
Welcome to the
now
room.
someone who
I'm
seemed like they
just
had no
relaxing and
substance to them
watching YouTube.
actually
That was-
has something they're extremely
Yeah, I read
passionate about, and it shows through the paneling and through the artwork very heavily, especially since the reason she was
Yeah,
on
I'm
top
just
of her
basically
game
watching
was
a
to impress
YouTuber,
one of the
Mr.
directors
Hunter,
watching
who
the
talk
show
about
to
Rent a
secure a
Girlfriend.
role for a future
I actually
performance.
haven't.
But he ended up going with
Yeah, I
another
just
one of the actresses,
watched like the
not
first 3
because of anything
episodes
that
of Rent a
Mizuhara
Girlfriend,
did,
the anime,
but
and then the
because
manga. I
she
think
was
was
the daughter
chapter.
of one of his sponsors. Although we don't get
I think it
insight
was the
into her
part
mind,
where he was
it's clear as day
you know,
that
that
this
mimetic
shatters her spirit.
panel
This is the first
where
time
he was in
the
a pool
entire
crying
series
while he has an
that
erection.
Mizuhara
Yeah,
has
that's really
very
weird
obvious
part.
internal conflict as a character. is
And
one
what
of
I
the
saw
first
in that
instances
part,
of her Mary
I did
Sue
not
persona
like. That's why
beginning
I
to
did
break.
not read this
She ends up
manga
running
anymore.
into Kazuya
Or
shortly
even watch
after,
the anime.
and tells him that she didn't get the part. Not because of anything going on behind the scenes, but in her eyes, it was due to her lack of talent. Then she does something almost unthinkable and says that she and Kazuya are the same. They both don't know when they should give up or take responsibility for their actions. To Mizuhara's surprise, and probably the audience's surprise too, Kazuya says that they are nothing alike, and that he's going to do whatever he can in his power to rent her, even if it destroys his financial stability. She works harder than he ever has for anything, chasing her dreams while working a rental job and living in a horrible apartment, and that her perfect acting job convinced his whole family they're legitimately a couple, on top of the fact that she was perfect on stage today. He's going to do whatever he can in his power to give her money
Yeah,
or
that
help
sounds
her
logical
support her
and,
dream,
you know,
so she
that
can't
sounds
give
brave
up.
of
This
him.
is the first outwardly selfless thing Kazuya does, since a lot of it before was selfish or ended up hurting someone. His intentions here have only Mizuhara's goal in his mind, because she means
Yeah,
so
that
much
sounded
to
really
him.
good.
And just like that, this arc is on its way to try and make Kazuya a less shit character. She ended up feeling terrible once she got home, but in between her tears, he started renting her en masse, and her tears became a little happier. And so, he begins to rent her a lot to be able to support her financially. She even puts down her girlfriend mode to act more like herself, so that she's being paid to just be her. And they even start to hang out more outside of rental dates. It's clear that the two of them are starting to become much more close, as the line between client and friend begins to blur. After this hangout though, they head to the hospital to visit Mizuhara's grandmother. This is when we get a lot of characterization for Mizuhara, and get an explanation as to why she is the way that she is. It turns out that Mizuhara is extremely emotional and acts a little spoiled, and is also very lonely. But she covers her faults and weaknesses up as much as she can. This is when he thinks back to episode 1, when she told him that everyone is lonely at points, and they do things to fill the void in their hearts. This, he believes, is the true version of herself coming out, and this adds a lot to her. They go the extra mile with it too, as we find out that her family life has been in shambles since her dad left when she was young, and both her granddad and mom died when she was in elementary school. The only family she has left is her grandma, and the reason she wants to be an actress so badly is due to a promise she made to her grandpa. She doesn't want her grandma to pass on before she makes it to the big screen. This is the missing link for her character that we've been in need of since the start of this series. Mizuhara is a Mary Sue because she's acting that way to hide her weaknesses. She's perfect at everything because the things she knows she isn't perfect at, she tucks away and doesn't let see the light of day. This includes her true emotions, which is behind closed doors she cries and lets her emotions out, or she blushes at the things that Kazuya says. By saying that Mizuhara's flawless characterization is due to her acting is a fantastic way to cover a lot of her issues as a character, and it even adds a bit of relatability to her as well. Plenty of people out there in the world act like they're fine or they're okay, when in reality they are far from it. And making Mizuhara like this, I believe, was a great addition that was necessary to her character. Her grandmother asks Kazuya to take care of her granddaughter, and for the first time, he finally admits that he loves Mizuhara to somebody. He wants to be her strength, regardless of his relation to her, and he isn't going to throw away the trust of Mizuhara's grandmother either. Gradually, Kazuya is becoming a character that isn't complete garbage. He still has his horny moments, but the horniness is over time replaced by a dude that is compassionate and cares deeply for Mizuhara. We are finally beginning to see the character that is optimistic that Kibe was talking about, or a guy like everyone else kept going on about earlier on. All it took was like 60 chapters, but hey, at least he's finally showing up. They also make it so much more obvious that Mizuhara is falling for Kazuya, especially when Ruka stays the night at his place and tries to make Mizuhara think they did the naughty. Oh, the naughty. Speaking of Ruka, this is the part where her character starts to get kind of muddled. She still loves Kazuya a lot and wants what's best for him, but also starts to get kind of clingy and really obsessive. She always wants to be by his side, texts him all the time, literally not leaving him with any free time, barges into his place uninvited a lot, invited herself to Kazuya's birthday celebration with his family unprompted, and she fabricates things to try and get a lead in this fictional girlfriend race, as she likes to call it. Also at the party here, I'm going to put a trigger warning here, because this might be too much for somebody, but she forced herself on Kazuya and made out with him, which has some really strange gray area to it. Yes, they're a couple by technicality, so inherently this isn't wrong, but it is definitely wrong in almost every other sense, since she knows he loves someone else. It's forced, and she didn't ask if he wanted this, and it's in the room next to his family, who is with Mizuhara. This is honestly a little bit of a crime, like a legal crime. I'm surprised they so easily just threw this in the story and didn't think of the repercussions, and I'm even more surprised that no one in the community talks about this, because this scene is not okay. Regardless of whether you're in a relationship with somebody, that doesn't mean that you at any point can just decide that you want to force yourself on someone. That's not cool. That is really, really not cool. I know I'm repeating myself a little bit here, but this is just really fucked up. I don't know what the writer was doing when he wrote this. Ruka used to be probably my favorite character in the series. I used to like Sumi a lot, but Ruka easily was just above Sumi for me. But after this, no, she is not my favorite anymore. In fact, she is not really a character I remotely like. Yes, I do feel bad that Kazuya is leading her on and will not tell her that he doesn't want to date her. But that in no way means that she should feel the need to do something without his permission. I really don't know why this is in this story. Let's just move on to the next bit. I'm gonna get angry if we keep talking about this. Mommy also, for some reason, can't let go of Kazuya. Despite her not valuing the relationship together, she seems to just kind of want him to suffer. Mommy is still a bit of a mystery, if I'm being honest, because we don't really know why she's acting the way she is at this point in the story. We have a slim thought that her dad might want to put her into an arranged marriage, but that doesn't explain her inability to let go of Kazuya. We don't know whether she loves him or she hates him. However, one of these nights, she does show up at Kazuya's house and notices a handbag in his room. She tries to figure out whose it is, since it obviously is not his, and her prime suspect after being told off is Ruka, but later finds Mizuhara with it. This led her to unblock Kazuya on Twitter and to find the account of his family's wine business. So Mommy reaches out and starts to become acquainted with Kazuya's grandmother. But we as an audience won't see the subplot resolve anytime soon, as it's seemingly forgotten about for probably 100 chapters or so. Despite the author introducing the idea of Mizuhara being an actress in the making and her hiding her emotions, and her grandmother wanting her to be happy in the 50s, we don't really hear about it again until chapter 89. During the middle of this, there's a lot of fluff that really just doesn't matter to the overall story, like Kazuya and Mizuhara going on a date in school uniforms for some reason. But at Kazuya's really complicated birthday celebration, that I mentioned earlier, Mizuhara gets a phone call from the hospital saying that her grandmother has collapsed. Just like how on episode 1 of the series, Kazuya got a phone call from his grandmother about how she had passed out. They go to the hospital, and while she appears fine, the doctors tell her that her grandmother doesn't have much time left. Kazuya resolves himself to tell the truth about their lies finally, but Mizuhara stops him since she doesn't want her grandmother to receive such serious news like that when she has such little time left in here. Ruka made a temporary ceasefire given the circumstances going on, and now our cast is filled with dread at the impending future. To ease the tension a little bit, Sumi takes Kazuya on an extremely fun adventure in this aquarium for his birthday, tending to pretty much every single one of his needs. She thought out a date as much as she could, from seeing penguins to talking about rare fish to a dolphin show that he had always wanted to see. I know I said this earlier, but seriously, Sumi is the best part of this show. There is never any bullshit with her. There's no blackmailing. There's no lying. No toxicity. No hiding emotions. Everything revolving around her is pure, and she doesn't keep anything a secret from Kazuya. She's easily the best character in this series. She even admits to loving him. Come on, Kazuya. Drop Mizuhara. Drop Ruka. Forget about mommy and go after Sumi. Come on, this is the better decision. What really makes her stand out is that she knows Kazuya doesn't feel the same way about her, and she keeps her feelings to herself to not burden him. She instead fully supports his endeavors with Mizuhara and wants to be a wall that can help encourage him when he needs it. She joins him in the emotions he's feeling and wants him to let it out. She even cries with him. Come on, she is amazing. It's after this that we get one of my favorite parts in this entire manga, and ironically enough, one that actually has personally stuck with me since I've read this series. We go back to when Mizuhara was a kid. She initially thought that dreams weren't a real thing, and she didn't even take her grandfather seriously because how much emphasis he put on things that were intangible, like emotions, or dreams, and God. She gradually formed an interest in movies and novels, and she admired the actors inside of them. She had heard stories about her grandmother being an actress, but she didn't believe them until one day in 9th grade. She found the movie that she was in. She took it home, watched it, and it completely changed her entire world. From that moment forward, she aspired to be exactly like her grandmother. It's through this aspiration that she delivers one of the most powerful thoughts that I've read in a medium, which is that, quote, "That's when I came to the realization that dreams aren't just nice things you hope will happen to you, but things you have to strive towards as though they possessed you." I obviously have a lot of hopes, dreams, and ambitions. I've mentioned them a myriad of times through my videos and streams, such as me wanting to be a director, or hoping to start a short film channel, or hoping this channel picks up so that it can turn into other channels like gaming. I want to meet people. And it's because of this that this line sticks with me a lot. You always have to keep pressing forward as if you are your dream. How inspiring is that? It's through this movie that she found out what her dream was, and her grandpa completely supported her and her dreams. They made a promise that when she got on the big screen, he would be the first to watch her movie. But before that promise could be fulfilled, he got into a car crash. She arrived at the hospital to him laying unconscious. She expressed that anything she wishes for will come true, and if she keeps at it, any dream will come true. She starts to cry in front of him, and somehow through this he manages to regain a little bit of consciousness, and says that her wish, her dream, will come true for sure. And after that, he left the world. We come back to the present, and Mizuhara is crying in her apartment since her dream may not come true before her grandma leaves this world too. But then Kazuya barges in. He explains to her about crowdfunding and how they'll make their own movie together. He's capable of it since he's a business major, and he knows that they can do it. She reminisces about the past and how she thought it was so stupid of her granddad to have dreams. And here Kazuya was doing the same thing he did way long ago. She then cries and asks Kazuya to please let her see this movie. This right here is what this manga should have been. 100 chapters in, and Mizuhara's emotions are finally getting to show, and Kazuya is acting selflessly to benefit her entirely. This is the pinnacle of the development that we'd been waiting for in this series, and it felt so rewarding. It was also a treat for me to read because, as I mentioned, I want to be a director one day and make movies. So all of what was in the manga had an extra layer of enjoyment for me. This is when Kazuya finally started to become a character that I respected. Of course, this didn't last, but that's for the final section. After this, he busts his ass to make her movie happen. He crowdfunds a ton of money, which is basically GoFundMe, gets permission to use a published web novel, rents a lot of film equipment, and assembles a team from his school's film club and some of his friends. Besides a few bumps occasionally, nearly everything came together fairly smoothly as they began to film. Almost every character is involved in this part of the story too. From Kobayashi to Ruka to Sumi, everyone matters in some kind of way and plays an important role for the overall plot.
Maybe
There
that's
is
the
a
real.
brief chapter in the middle where Mizuhara meets with her grandmother and asks her what she thinks of Kazuya. Her grandmother actually said something very surprising to me, which is that everyone survives by supporting each other. A perfect person doesn't exist. That's why when you lack something, you make
The
up for
hell?
it with the help
Yeah,
of
this is
another
really
person.
good.
This changed
there's
my
something
perspective
really wrong.
on romance.
So there's the
if I'm being
possibility that
honest.
the
A lot of my
mangaka,
relationships have been like,
yeah, he has a good
75%
beginning and he's planning to
being
end
put
it,
in on
but
one
he
side,
screwed. He
25%
intentionally
put in
sabotaged his
on
own
the other,
work.
where I'm putting in a ton of effort and they put in some of the effort occasionally. Hearing it here from Rent-A-Girlfriend was
Yeah,
surprisingly
because there's a
impactful.
message. There's
Because
a
despite me
plan
thinking
here.
Kazuya is a piece of shit a lot of the time, he still fits the niche that Mizuhara needs in her life. Love is a weird thing. This is combined with his conversation with the director from the film club, which is where he did everything for him for 3 weeks, so he would consider giving Mizuhara a chance. Not for his sake though, but because he owes it to her for all that she's done for him. So not only is the romance progressing, but Kazuya is becoming a much better person in the process. We even get a confession from Mizuhara. A complicated one, but a confession nonetheless. In the middle of this movie being made, we get introduced to the second best character of this series, Minnie. She is Kazuya's other neighbor and a year below him in college, as well as a weeb, cosplayer, and gamer, on top of being a social media influencer. She ends up finding out about the rental girlfriend stuff accidentally because Ruka was too loud about it one night, and she becomes the only person to know the entire full truth. The situation, Kazuya's feelings for Mizuhara, and more. She ends up giving him real advice that is legitimately helpful to Kazuya, helps him sort out some of his feelings, and support his endeavors with his attempted relationship advancements. Minnie accidentally has become the best wingman possible, and also is a major factor in what boosted Kazuya from a scumbag to a tolerable and decent character. Not to mention, she also talks a ton of sense into Mizuhara, telling her that Kazuya loves her and explaining how she's trying to suppress her romantic desires for him. She also helped Mizuhara and Kazuya take an entire trip on their own. Like, this is the wingman of the century behavior right here. Come on, guys. This is
wingman
all while
of
she
the
makes
century.
a lot of pop culture references to
Go
other
for
anime and
it!
manga or gacha games or
can
Japanese
do it!
culture, and is a lot of fun to watch,
You
if I'm
can
being
do
honest.
it!
Anyways, though,
Yo,
Kazuya really pulls his
that's
act
kinda
together
funny,
in this
though.
part of the story. Don't get me wrong, he still has his moments where I want to punch him, but he is doing so much to be better, being more open about his feelings, trying to not lead Ruka on as much, doing everything in his power to make Mizuhara's dreams come true, and so much more. He went from being overly passive and not doing anything for anyone, only causing issues, to helping Mizuhara make her dream come true, putting Ruka in a situation where she can get her heart to beat the fastest it's ever, and treating Sumi like an amazing friend, while also treating all of his other college friends like Kibe way better. And I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the chapters originally were super frustrating, but these are all just so rewarding to see happen. There were a few instances where I would get happy for the characters, or cry with them when they felt certain emotions, like the chapter where Mizuhara expresses all of her gratitude and appreciation for Kazuya while remembering her grandfather as they filmed the last scene of the movie. That was fucking awesome. A moment built up for so long, made even better because it's the first time in the entire series that Mizuhara was so appreciative to Kazuya. Or the chapter where they take Mizuhara's grandmother to see where the movie will be played, and she starts monologuing, asking if her late husband is seeing the woman Mizuhara has become. These scenes are so emotional. Rent-A-Girlfriend gradually went from a series I passionately hated to one that I really started to enjoy and resonate with. Although her grandmother's health is one of the looming factors that is always present in this part of the manga, and she doesn't stay healthy for too long. When Kazuya and Mizuhara leave her grandmother alone after they show her the movie screen, she passes out and falls out of her wheelchair. They rush her to the hospital, but things are not looking good. She is likely going to pass that night. Mizuhara shows no outward emotion and expresses that she is upset that her grandmother will never get to see the movie, but she has no regrets. Something that is insane to me, though, is that Kazuya asks her if she's okay with lying to her grandmother as she lays on her deathbed, and he says that she is dragging on their lie. Kazuya admitting that he wants and thinks they should tell the truth, and now Mizuhara is the one clinging to their lie. A complete 180 of how things were at the beginning of the story. The two have a minor argument, and Kazuya runs off while Mizuhara stays her emotions, decides to finally start expressing them, and letting her grandmother know how she feels. Thanks her for holding on for so long. She asks if it just wasn't enough, and she begins to apologize to her grandmother and to saying how much she wanted to show her the movie. As she sits with only the sounds of her tears and the heartbeat monitor, Kazuya reappears, ignoring her. When Kazuya turns on a projector, the character has been waiting for an action combined for Kazuya, and seeing Mizuhara's reaction to this made my heart break. The movie begins to play in front of her bed, and Mizuhara tries to make sure her grandmother is at least conscious to hear this, telling her to look as she starts to cry more. As the movie plays out, lights fade from Mizuhara's pupils. A miracle happens, and Sayuri opens her eyes. She watches the movie for a few minutes as all of the most important moments of Mizuhara's life with her grandmother play, stating proudly that dreams do come true. Sayuri closes her eyes again with a strong smile on her face, proud that her granddaughter was able to achieve her dream.
This sounds like an ending.
This chapter, no matter how many times I read it, always manages to get me emotional. Even reading it again to write the script, I found myself crying with Mizuhara, and even
This
here
feels
again,
really good.
while I'm voicing it,
this looks like
feeling
a real
some
ending.
urges to cry again. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
this
lie
is
with you guys.
basically
This
an
feels like the
endpoint.
moment Rent-A-Girlfriend has been building towards for its
I'm not
entire
saying
runtime.
they couldn't
As Mizuhara holds her
add
grandmother's
more,
hand while
but
the movie
like,
continues to play.
yeah, this is a
This is
damn
when
good way to
finally
end it. Like,
Mizuhara lets out all of her emotions.
this is how the
and how
arc ends, and
confused
that's
she is
it.
about what to do with Kazuya. Her grandmother once again regains consciousness and tells her to let her know what's bothering her. And Mizuhara begins to tell her the truth, but stops herself midway. Her grandmother acknowledges that she has lied about something, but what it is, she doesn't mind. There aren't many simple choices but to press forward through the endless doubt, the anxiety,
Interesting.
the anguish, and
That is
keep
very,
facing those
very
difficult
interesting.
choices. That's the only way to live a life to
That
the
is
fullest.
very, very
She tells her that since she grew up to be
That,
a woman
you know,
just like that,
things that would
that's all
happen.
she needs to be
It's a
happy,
real ending.
and that she was beautiful,
That is
in
a
the
real
movie.
ending.
that the movie was wonderful, and she thanks her. She embraces her in a hug, letting her know that she is her pride and joy, and that she loves her so much. Mizuhara says that she loves her too, and they both cry together, and the two hug each other in one of the most impactful panels in the manga. This is beautiful, and nothing short of it. After working so hard to make her dreams come true in the circumstances she faced, she was able to show her last living relative the movie she always wanted to make. This helps to close out Mizuhara's arc as a character, as she becomes more in tune with her emotions and accomplishes her biggest goal. This helps to begin to narrow and bring Kazuya's arc to an end, as he's become more of a genuine guy, more open about his feelings, and less of an incel. The path of all that he has left to do is very clear, which is to put things with Ruka to an end and tell Mizuhara the truth about his feelings. And God, it's so emotional. You start off this series hating the characters so much and wanting them to get better. So when you finally get to see them blossom into amazing people, it's just amazing. You believe that the story is beginning to enter its final moments, as Kazuya is trying to be supportive and someone Mizuhara can lean on, just like how she was for him at the beginning of the series, but she refutes his help. This is the last hurdle for Mizuhara, opening up to Kazuya. The situation is set up perfectly for it, and his grandmother lays it out for him when they go to Sayuri's funeral. To help clear his mind on what exactly he should do, he goes on an outing with Sumi, where she tells him something in the most Sumi way possible, by writing it in the sand. She says that she knows what it's like to be miserable, but she thinks any girl would be happy to have someone come right out and try to cheer them up. Only Chizuru-chan really knows what she's feeling. But if it was her, she would be happy. While giving Kazuya the encouragement he needed to help Mizuhara, this date also concluded Sumi's arc. Sumi loves Kazuya. That much has become clear over the course of the story. But here she knows how he feels and who he loves. So, unlike Ruka or Mami, once again she puts her feelings on the back burner and supports Kazuya instead fully as a friend. She knows she shouldn't meddle, only advise. This is perfect for her arc, and a good closing for Sumi. With all of the ends being pulled together and conclusions being formed, all seeming like the story is coming to an end, this seems like a fantastic way to end this abysmal and miserable story. Everyone has evolved and changed so much, and this story went from a lonely man filling his horny hole in his heart to a man helping the girl he loves achieving her dreams to make her family proud. What a great turn of events is that. In the next few chapters, Kazuya would take Mizuhara on the perfect date, and that lasted almost an entire day. They got crab, they shopped together, went to fantastic places, and ended the night with fireworks because of how much he wanted to cheer her up. But he notices that lighting sparklers seems to evoke something in her that makes her want to cry. As their date wraps up, he decides to let his voice be known and what his perfect girlfriend would be. And he lets her know that it's okay for the perfect girlfriend to cry. She scans her brain, going through memories of her grandmother and her grandfather, gradually beginning to cry until she bawls her eyes out in Kazuya's arms. Now things are crystal clear to the ending, since Mizuhara is opening up. All that's left is a confession. But, as I'm sure you guessed, this series, for some reason, does not end here, or even remotely soon. It, in fact, goes on for another 70 chapters, which could be more, since this is only at the point of recording this video. So, join me now, as we talk about the third part to this video that completely undermines everything good that we just talked about. Put another trigger warning here because Ruka is a really terrible character, so please skip ahead if you need to. And she forces herself on him again! Dude, like, what the fuck? Ruka is turning into a love-obsessed character, a toxic person that cares about nothing but herself, and she once again is committing sexual assault. And if anybody tries to defend Ruka by this point in the story, I don't really understand how you can. Ruka has become probably the worst character in the manga. I dislike her more than I disliked Mami at the beginning. Mizuhara ends up showing up with Kazuya's grandmother after this, and Kazuya's grandma presents the setting for where this big conflict will be taking place. A spa resort. She invites Ruka and Mizuhara to go, and Mizuhara going would be a huge violation of her terms and services as a rental girlfriend, but that doesn't really matter because Ruka lies to Kazuya's grandmother, saying that they are all free. So she makes plans for them to all go, and as they're all leaving, Ruka barges into Mizuhara's apartment and shows her an open condom wrapper, again fabricating that Kazuya and her had gone to the next base. Dude, like, why? She went from a girl that was pretty understanding of Mizuhara's situation and Kazuya's feelings, just wanting
No.
to be
I
able
gotta
to
make
feel
this
her
character
heartbeat,
more
to
horrible.
caring about nothing but her own agenda.
Oh yeah, that's kind of
and
terrible.
Forcing herself
That
to
is
stay in
kind
a
of terrible.
relationship that she isn't really happy
That
in,
is kind of
and she
terrible.
knows the other
Oh,
person
no.
loves someone else. Like, again, she's in a situation that she knows will do nothing but hurt her, but she's forcing the situation to continue on anyways. This doesn't make a single After the 218th chapter of Rent-A-Girlfriend, fans of the series began to unanimously outcry about the horrible state of the story. I'm so embarrassed to recommend this series to others. Man, Reggie really threw this manga to the ground. I'm so disappointed. The shocking truth to this horrific chapter is that the author might have had other intentions with the direction the manga had taken prior to this, with the community theorizing that the author himself is jealous of the main character getting together with his best girl, Mizuhara. So logically, he can never let Kazuya and Mizuhara date or his fantasy is ruined. Allow me to elaborate some. Reiji Miyajima was an aspiring manga artist during the early 2000s who showed a lot of talent, receiving an honorable mention at the 75th Weekly Shonen Magazine Newcomer Manga Award in 2005 for a one-shot called Bull no Sabuten. After working as an assistant for Ace of the Diamond, he would occasionally do short serials in manga magazines or one-shots until 2009, when he would land himself his first long-running manga called AKB49 The Rules Against Love. This manga was heavily based around the actual idol group called AKB48 and would run for a whopping 263 chapters while being well received among its readers. This series remained really popular, so much so that a musical based off the manga sold out all of its 824 seats. I assume most of the people here watching this video, like myself, had never heard about this before, but after seeing this panel, I might just check it out.
Stop it. Get some help.
Miyajima, having finished
it,
his
get some
first
help.
successful manga, decided to start brainstorming for his next series, and one day stumbled upon a Chinese news article discussing how people would rent girlfriends to alleviate familial pressure. He thought this idea was really dumb, but took interest as it was cute and relatable. He rushed to the nearest girlfriend rental service and rented girls to ask them questions. It is with this newfound knowledge that he took to beginning the well-known series called Rent a Girlfriend. The series focuses around Kazuya renting Mizuhara to be his girlfriend and telling his family that she is his real girlfriend. Reiji has stated that he put parts of himself in all of his characters, which both shows in the story and is a bit of a concerning statement.
What's wrong with you?
The story at first in its manga was a bit of a mess, with there being no real direction or focus to it, besides the lie and the rental gimmick. However, despite it being a mess, people fell in love with it and its sense of trashiness. When someone began to read it, they could not stop themselves from continuing it. The manga remained fairly popular up to its anime announcement for 2020. Not much was expected from the series by the larger anime community, but upon its release, it began a complete takeover of the 2020 summer season. The series would become the most watched anime of the season behind ReZero's second season, and currently has over 800,000 down bad people on my anime list. People knew the series was garbage, but we all loved it regardless. The story would finally find its footing with Kazuya and Mizuhara's relationship after the place the anime ended, which is about 40-some chapters into the series. Things here would take an unexpected turn, when Mizuhara's grandmother landed in the hospital. In an attempt to pay his debts to her, Kazuya helps Mizuhara make a movie to show her grandmother in a very beautiful arc that I covered extensively in my deep dive video for the series. This is when people began to believe and truly care about the franchise. However, after the manga had put forth a lot of progress in both of their characters and finally appeared to begin wrapping up, it randomly began to stall. Each chapter that came out after 179 seemed to take the quote-unquote couple back a step, and further back until they appeared to almost be back at square one of their supposed relationship. This felt like a massive jab to the readers of the series as they saw the relationship between the two flourish for around 130 chapters, and randomly begin to see it regress for 40 chapters until the infamous 218. In it, Kazuya imagines the woman he loves getting railed by another character in the series named Umi, and finds himself sobbing but weirdly aroused by his thoughts. Damn, Reiji, really hope you didn't see yourself in Kazuya with this one.
Well, let's be nice. Let's be nice. We don't have to go there.
As I mentioned previously, the readers of the manga would begin to outcry after this extremely pornographic chapter. An outcry that was so loud, it was heard everywhere among the entire anime community. This bump in the story would end with Mizuhara and Kazuya telling his family about their lie, thanks to Mami, who was the only one pushing this story forward. But Mizuhara seems to hint after this that she has feelings for Kazuya. These hints would lead to a whopping nothing, because Mizuhara would ghost Kazuya and the series would essentially take a complete hard reset. Almost as if it was the first few chapters all over again. Reiji would continue to draw very pornographic scenes of Mizuhara, and around this time he began to post very strange threads on his Twitter. This 36-year-old man would release a series of real-world images with Mizuhara drawn into them, all having bizarre messages attached to them as if she was really there with him. These tweets randomly took a grim and creepy turn when the author released one of her in the shower, with a comment translating to, quote, This girl is my beautiful girlfriend and her name is Chizuru Mizuhara. She is a very kind girl and she always forgives me in the end, even if she gets really mad at me afterwards. This, paired with the series of tweets released prior to this, made the fans begin to realize that Reggie himself might be becoming obsessed with his own creation, believing she's genuinely real and falling in love with her. Is this guy okay? He drew her in his bed too. Feels like he's really fallen in love with his own drawing. This fear would only be amplified when he later would have had a Kazuya-like meltdown on Twitter, where he would fawn over a life-sized figure of Mizuhara with, once again, creepy descriptions. He kind of was just making a bunch of really strange sounds. I don't want to say it because I feel like I'll sound stupid making the sounds, but these tweets would later be followed up by a more cohesive and understandable tweet where he explains how overjoyed he was that she was getting a life-sized figure, and he notes that he specifically requested to the figure makers that her clothing was removable. He would continue to release more creepy tweets thirsting over his own creation, some of which are arguably pretty funny, like the one where he said he wanted to be a swing with Mizuhara swinging on it. I don't even know anymore if Reggie is trolling or not. At this point, I'll just watch how this insanity will unfold. His tweets hit a disturbing pinnacle when a few days before posting this video, he released a tweet stating someone lost their panties, with a pair of underwear on the floor, obviously intended to belong to Mizuhara. All of these tweets of Reggie become very disturbing once he realized that not only is he publicly doing this, but he's married, and he's got a kid or two. And on top of this, as I stated earlier, Reggie inserted himself into his characters. At least he said he did. His obsession with Mizuhara would also explain the sudden lack of progress in the story, as now he is trying to either drag it out to fulfill his fantasies vicariously through Kazuya, or feels jealous of Kazuya, so instead he's continually trying to cuck him. This would make even more sense as to why recently Mizuhara has been drawn more sexually, either in a fan service way or a pornographic way compared to normal. This has resulted in mass backlash from his fans and from various social media news platforms, as people are beginning to either lose their patience or become genuinely concerned for him. One of the more popular theories that has come out recently is that Umi in chapter 218 is actually a self-insert of Reggie, coming from Japanese resident Stevio, or Stevo, really don't know how you want this name to be pronounced. On the manga subreddit, they say that, quote, many people were confused about why that guy had a beret. After today's comments, this explains it. These comments referring to him saying that Chizuru was his girlfriend on his Twitter. Why do manga artists wear a beret? One cannot have their hair falling on the painting and ruining it. This was the style that characterized most artists from the time of Paris's Expo. This fashion came to Japan, and thus we all believed an artist was supposed to wear a beret. For us, it was like, first, you have to look like an artist. Could the character in chapter 218 actually be a self-insert of Reggie to fulfill his twisted desires? Rent-A-Girlfriend is currently sitting at around 245 chapters, having run for over 5 years now, and almost as long as the AKB49 manga he had written before this. There currently appears to be no end in sight for the series, as Kazuya recently said he would wait 10 years or more for Mizuhara to make a decision about her feelings. So, who knows how long the suffering will last for the audience of this manga. All I have to say though is Reggie obviously took inspiration from the thumbnail of my last video saying that Kazuya would wait 10 years or more, and maybe you should also take inspiration and go check that video out.
Hello there, Dark. Welcome to the room. Anyway, it's about 10 p.m. and I think I'm just about to stop this. Oh shit. Okay. Anyway, I'm about to stop because I might. Oh, it's still open. Yeah, I will need to stop the stream now. Anyway, Dark, if you're still there, thank you for visiting the stream. But yeah, I will need to stop now because it's already 10 p.m. My commander's gonna be angry at me, and eventually I'm gonna be resting now while doing my the things that I need before I sleep. Already 10 p.m. here in the Philippines. Hope that I will still see you later. Let's stop. 3, 2, 1.